So in 2024, I recorded and released my debut album, Low Voltage. I started writing this album in 2023, and there was definitely an upfront year of composing and planning what kind of sound I was going to go for. From here, I continued to write and refine the ideas that I thought would make the release. Making Low Voltage was an extremely complex and new process to me, and in this video I'm going to show you the behind the scenes of what it really took to make my album. This album was recorded in my final year at the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire while I was studying jazz bass performance, and this was my major project. And the record features saxophonist Oscar Lawrance, trombonist Hanssen, guitarist Ollie Canham, and drummer Dominic and was sound engineered by Ross Walter, and the album artwork was designed by Saskia Hanssen. So having reflected on my journey to releasing Low Voltage on December the 1st, 2024, in hindsight I can roughly break down the process into 7 categories. These consist of composing, arranging, practicing the material, rehearsing with the band, the production, studio sessions, mixing, mastering, and the gear and branding. So, starting with number 1, I spent a good 6 months writing the material whenever I had a spare moment. I would write something, see if it stuck, and if I was happy with it, would continue to develop it and try and find new sections to try and grow the possibilities of an idea. This album was largely written from melodic ideas as well as rhythmic and groove ones. I wanted this album to really feature the bass not only in its comping role, but have soloistic contributions, as this is a part of my sound on the instrument. For example, the last track featured the bass playing the melody, and this is what I was really hearing in my head, and it offered a different kind of instrumentation. Sonically, this album was to be recorded live in one room, and this was going to enable us to capture the spontaneity and interaction of a live performance. Having the acoustic sound of the drums, trombone and saxophone blended with the electronic possibilities of the guitar and bass gave me a large palette of tonal possibilities to work with. So once I'd composed the tracks, I spent a lot of time with the music on the instrument, practicing and refining my bass tone, as well as deciding on techniques I was going to use for the album. Now the gear I recorded on played a role in this, so stay tuned for the gear section coming up. For my original track Spark, I made a backing track for myself and the band to practice to, and it really served as a demo and something to have ahead of the first rehearsal. I spent a lot of time coming up with the groove ideas for this track, using this demo to play along with, and it was a really useful tool to develop my ideas in my own time. In particular, I remember spending time over the Christmas holidays of 2023, having fun creating these tracks, which I did for 4 or 5 or so on the album. So we're on to number 3. Rehearsing with the band was a pivotal moment, and it's where I quickly gained momentum with the project. And when you play with really good musicians, the music really comes to life and it feels effortless. Going from sitting working using notation software to playing with real people immediately reveals the sound of your vision, and I think reminds you of what the whole process is about. A month before the release, I played a support set at the Eastside Jazz Club in Birmingham, opening for the Kit Downs Enemy Trio. Having this early January date in the calendar, which came about in the Christmas holidays of 2023, gave me a real motivation to get the material as ready to go as possible and have at least 5 of the tracks ready to rehearse and perform with the band. This would then set me up for recording towards the end of January. We were all very open in the rehearsals about potential changes to any of the arrangements or sections of the music, but overall the band enjoyed the tunes, and we went on to play some of my original music on various gigs, including the Ollie Canham Quartet at the Canham Club in North London, the Craven Arms in Birmingham, and eventually at the Ruin in Birmingham for the album launch party. So this leads me on to the studio sessions. We had 2 dates, one in January and one in February. There were some setbacks with dates, and we originally had 2 days a couple of days apart in January. However, these dates were cancelled, so we had to rebook new ones. In the end, it actually worked out well, as it gave me some extra time to focus on the final 3 tracks and any last minute tweaking I wanted to do for those arrangements. The first day was a real success, and we managed to track 4 of the 7 compositions. My sound engineer Ross Walter was really helpful with giving us feedback to when he thought the music was at its best, which was very useful, especially as your perception as a player when you're really in it and so focused on everything going on around you, it can be really useful to have a second opinion. I had worked with Ross the previous year on a couple of funk jazz tracks and was super happy with the result. Covering a lot of ground in the first session meant that it gave us more time in the second session, and this is always really useful in the studio, as you need to allow good amounts of time before and after recording to set up the equipment, including mics, cables and shielding, to ensure that you get the best possible sound. Ross did an amazing job, which set us up with a fantastic environment to record in. The bass setup was also super crucial for the sound that I was going for, and I'll cover more of this in the gear section coming up soon. This leads me on to talking about the mixing and mastering, which was all done by Ross. He took this project back to Coventry, where he did the mixing and mastering at Powerhouse Studios. They have a fantastic room there with some super high quality speakers, a spaceship kind of room, which also has its own studio. Having an acoustically treated professional space with loads of amazing analog gear was the perfect setup for working on this album. I visited Ross for a day in the mastering suite. We spent a good 3 or 4 hours working through the tracks to get the sound. We spent a lot of time working on the bass sound, as we wanted to get the right balance between the amp and DI signal, and it was super important to me to have a strong, focused sound as close as possible to what I hear in my head. Ross was able to capture that across the whole ensemble, and all that was left was to complete the whole package with some branding. The album cover art was a really important visual representation of my music, and UK-based graphic design artist Saskia Hanssen designed the cover artwork from a picture I sent her from a live performance. She came back within a few days with the first draft, and after working with her on a couple more, she very quickly came back with the final piece, which I think is fantastic. This was perfect to have on the CD design and of course all the digital stores and streaming services. Now finally, I wanted to talk about the gear that I used on this album. I used my 5-string Ken Smith bass for 6 out of 7 of the tracks, and for Kikira, I used my custom Sugar Artist Fretless bass. This bass was the perfect vibe for the track, which I wrote whilst on the Greek island a couple of summers ago, and the different bass sound was welcome amongst the mix of some of the heavier tracks. This bass is very simple in terms of dials and tonal configuration. It has a volume and tone control, and it's still strung with the Labella white tape wounds that I used on the album. The bass has an airy, slightly woody tone, which I think is largely down to the chambered body, and this gives more of an acoustic vibe with lots of attack and a smooth sound quality. Look out for a video on this bass in the near future. Now onto the Ken Smith. This is strung with the Dario nickel plated round wounds, and the bass was recorded in active mode with flat EQ. I used this Hebway DI preamp, which went straight into my little Mark III head amp, which powered a Trace Elliott cabinet, which was mic'd up in the studio. Ross then took a blend of these 2 signals in the studio, and this is what you hear on the album. I'd like to thank all my bandmates for their hard work on this project, as well as Ross Walter for the sound engineering and Saskia Hanssen for the album artwork. And to all my friends around me, I'm super excited to have this album out. To check it out, see the link in the description of this video. Drop a like if you've enjoyed the video today, like and subscribe, and share the album with anyone you think would enjoy my music. And hit that bell notification so you don't miss new videos. Have a great day, and I'll see you back here for the next one.